Ciao, Sue.
Ciao, Sue.
What are we doing here today?
Well, yesterday, Lance released a video about...
Yesterday, all my troubles seem so far away.
Yesterday, Lance released a video about Annalise and all the cut content related to her.
Mm-hmm.
And that got 10,000 views in a matter of hours. So I thought...
OMG.
Yeah, we've got a lot of cut stuff we can talk about. So if we make another cut content video, we'll easily get 10 times that. So this is a bunch of cut stuff that you can't make a video out of, basically, because you can't see it. Similar, I guess, to, like, discussions we've had with Loki and stuff, where it's like, this is interesting, but there's no way to show it off, so we're just going to have to talk about it.
I'll put some copyright-free pictures in the background.
Of Bloodborne, or of just, like, anything?
No, just, like, random stuff that I get on Pixabay.
Like a cat, some Easter eggs.
Yeah, flowers.
Yeah. Kitten and a pumpkin.
Yeah, maybe balloons.
Yeah.
Snacks.
Yeah. Have you thought about looking into the royalty-free pictures of shirtless buff guys that they use on the front of all those books I've been buying?
Have I? You tell me.
I don't know, I'm asking you.
No, I haven't.
I think if you start using those in thumbnails, we'll get more views.
Okay, I could put a buff guy into this podcast.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Excellent.
Good.
So, cut content.
Cut content. Okay, so do you want to start? I think we'll start with interesting stuff because everyone usually tunes out about halfway.
Okay.
Yeah. So we'll front load the good stuff.
Mm-hmm.
We should talk about the beast transformation mechanic that everyone thought existed in Bloodborne and then decided didn't, and then decided did, and then it was a rune in the DLC.
Mm-hmm.
So, before Bloodborne came out, people thought, oh, it's going to be like in the Souls games where you've got human and hollow. In this, you'll have like human and beast, and you'll transform throughout the game. And, like, the early screens we got of Bloodborne, they had a meter filling up that was called Therianthropy, which later became the Beasthood meter. So we knew that there was this Beasthood thing, and everyone was talking about, oh, there's going to be, like, beast transformation will be in the game. The game then came out, and there was no beast transformation. Oh, no. Which led to, like, oh, well, there clearly was no beast transformation. And then they added in the DLC the rune that gave you beast transformation. But weirdly, there was still the beasthood meter, and all the like armor sets had beasthood stats, and there were beasthood runes and stuff. So, do you know much about how beasthood works in the game that we have now?
Tell me about it.
Okay. Beasthood is a temporary buff that you apply using either beast blood pellets or the beast claw weapon. And what it does is, it fills up as you do damage to other things. It's kind of like how in Dark Souls 3 there are weapon arts and like items and things that trigger like as you're doing damage. So basically when you start Beasthood, the meter fills up a little bit, and then as you hit stuff, the meter keeps filling up. If you stop hitting stuff, the meter goes down. What it does is, the higher the meter is, the more damage you do, but also the more damage you take. So, like, as it's filling up, you're doing more and more and more damage, but you're also taking more damage in return. So it's kind of like, it's like a trade-off. It's like you become a glass cannon if you fill up the Beasthood meter. But maxing out the Beasthood meter does nothing. Like, it just fills up. And then it just means it lasts for longer when you stop hitting stuff. So, in the data mined, like, on-screen prompts that we have, underneath like frenzy, poison, rapid poison, etc., there's an unused prompt that says transformed. And like, I have to be clear, this is like, it's with those things. It's not like a note from the programmers. It's not something that's related to transforming weapons. It's like just an unused thing underneath slow poison, rapid poison, and frenzy is transformed. And we know from like other data mine stuff that we've seen in the earlier versions of the game, the sedatives, they don't just cure frenzy, they also cure beasthood. And along with that, there's also there's an unused item called Beast Blood, not Beast Blood Pellet, that if you use it, it lowers your beasthood resistance. So in the final game, all you can do is use either Beast Blood or the Beast Claw to start the beasthood meter off. But here it looks like you have the ability to like manage beasthood, and there'd be situations where you'd want beasthood to go down. There's not really a reason in the final game that you would ever want beasthood to go down. Like, obviously you are taking more damage when you've got beasthood on, but you have to intentionally trigger beasthood to begin with. So like, there really aren't, it would be stupid for there to be an item that sole purpose was removing a buff, because the buff has a very slight drawback. So putting all these things together, it looks like in some early version, if the beasthood bar filled all the way up, you would get that on-screen transformed message. But we also know that, like, unless something really, really, like, was absolutely scrubbed and we just never found it, there's not, like, a beast version of your character that you could control. So what it looks like to me is that beasthood probably worked similarly to how it does now, where it was a temporary buff. But I think the deal was, like, this is all just me speculating, but this kind of lines up with everything I've seen, is that if that meter filled all the way up, you would get that transformed prompt. And I think that was probably an instant death thing. Because you can't play as a beast, but it looks like you could fill it up and transform. So I'm assuming that it was kind of like Curse in Dark Souls, where it's like a non-standard game over, where like you can be fine health-wise, but if this bar fills up, you just instantly die. So I'm guessing that was the deal with beasthood early on, that like you would have been able to transform, but it killed you. But also because it gave you a buff, there were like means of managing how beasthood worked. Because there's all of these beasthood items that like raise it and lower it, and you've got like the beasthood transformation message propping up, and yeah, it just looks like that's how it functioned.
Okay, thank you, Richie.
And I guess like the Gascoigne fight would have been like a preview of that like as Gascoigne is taking damage and fighting you, he then snaps. So I'm guessing like your character could kind of do that. Like you could get this spurt of like power, but the price was like this bar would start filling up, and if you didn't manage it, you would It actually reminds me a bit of a mechanic that's in Miyazaki's Armored Core games, where you can like, you have an energy bar that like, you use it for a whole lot of things, but it's possible to like intentionally overload it and then vent it. And it does a ton of damage, but also it's really risky to do, because you can like overheat. So it seems like that's a more like fully featured and like thematically interesting version of that mechanic than just like beasthood is a buff.
Mm-hmm.
Mm. So that's the most interesting thing.
Yay!
You can turn off now. There's other stuff though.
Okay, bye everyone.
Bye everyone.
Thanks for coming.
Okay. So the What else is there?
And if people want to have a quick review of what you just said, where can they find it?
I posted most of this stuff on Twitter. So if you go to my Twitter and you just like search for, I don't know, Beasthood or like data mining or something, you'll find most. Because I've been like basically live blogging stuff as I go through it. Mm-hmm. Okay.
Excellent. Okay. Thank you, Richie.
So now I want to talk about 2 unused summon characters.
Mm-hmm. Who are they?
Well, they're both characters that we know, but basically in the list of NPCs. Yes.
Richie?
Yeah.
Is it Ludwig and Maria?
Sadly, no, this Ludwig is connected to it.
Oh, okay. Did I predict content again? I'm predicting content live. Are you impressed?
It's very good.
Thank you.
Okay, so these are 2 characters that we already know. The way that the game handles summons is that, like, if every time you summon a character, even if it looks like when you summon Alfred in Old Yharnam and like summon Alfred in Central Yharnam, like those aren't the same Alfred. They just make like a copy of Alfred for every area. It's like, and like every Alfred that you meet is actually a completely different NPC. Basically, do you understand what I mean? Like, there's like one it's like Alfred in, like, you meet Alfred in the little church on the way to Old Yharnam. Right. That's one version of Alfred. When you summon Alfred in Old Yharnam, that's just a completely separate character. Like, they just remove the one near the church and then they activate that one. Then when you meet Alfred by the Grand Cathedral, that's just like they just delete that Alfred, add another Alfred.
Okay.
Yeah. So what I'm getting at is, like, there's like every time an NPC changes areas, it's actually like a different NPC. So there's like a whole lot of different versions of like Alfred and Eileen just for every event that happens in the game.
Okay.
And some of those are tagged. It's like a word that means like united cooperation or something, which means they're a summon. So like the Eileen that fights you with Henrik and the Alfred that you summon as a cooperator, like they have this little tag next to them. There is an unused version of Dura that has that tag.
Oh, snap.
Yeah, so it looks like you would have been able to summon Dura. Not like, I don't mean you can befriend Dura. I mean, like, you would have been able to ring the bell and summon Dura to help you.
Oh, that would have been cool.
Yeah, and he's located in, it looks like he's in Old Yharnam. I don't know, though. And I'm thinking, like, I'm just speculating, but I think the idea is, like, if you befriended Dura, he would be a friendly summon at some point.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
That would make sense.
Yeah. Because, like, befriending Dura kind of, it doesn't really progress anything. You just don't get shot. Yeah, so that's, would have been a Dura summon at some point. Yeah. The other summon is a guy who we can already summon, which is Old Hunter Yamamura.
Nice.
Yeah, but he is summonable for Ludwig. There's like an unused version you can call for Lud. Now, this seems like, okay, whatever, Yamamura is in the DLC. The problem with that is that in order to summon Yamamura, you have to have killed him in the jail cell. But the jail cell is after Ludwig. So it's physically impossible,
that is a problem.
Yeah, to have killed Yamamura in the cell before you fight Ludwig. So that's, like, it's only notable in the sense that, like, it shows that there was initially another way to get to Ludwig. And I'm starting to think that, like, obviously we know it was 2 DLCs and they kind of, like, mashed them together. But I'm thinking, like, it's possible that you actually get to Ludwig now backwards from the way you would originally have gotten to him. Like, I think originally you would have gone down the jail and Ludwig would have been at the bottom of the jail, instead of you starting where Ludwig is and climbing up through the jail.
Yeah. Yeah,
because we know now that Hemwick and the Nightmare Frontier are both backwards. So, like, backwards areas are a thing in Bloodborne. Yeah. So that's it for unused summons. There is another unused NPC who is just called... what is he called? He's just called, like, NPC of Oldcastle Bloodline, meaning he's from Canehurst. He's located in Canehurst. We don't know anything about him. He's just like a string of numbers. But there is an unused name for a character called Drifting Vileblood Leo.
Right.
And there's also an unused face that's like in the face data that looks like he's like a vampire guy. He's very, very pale skin with like big dark eyes. He kind of looks like Christopher Walken. So if you like combined that together, I'm pretty sure that like that NPC, that name, and that face are the same guy. So that would have been Vileblood Leo.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. There's also 2 versions of the Vileblood Queen in there. There's the version we didn't get, which I think is the version that Lance has like got that dialogue from, who is called Fallen Blood Queen. And then the character who is Annalise is called Blood Princess. So it looks like they had 2 kind of like... There would have been maybe a queen and a princess of Canehurst at one point. And maybe like the Slug Princess was involved in this. We don't know.
Uh-huh.
Yeah. And anyway, there's the most interesting thing about that is that there's a 4th Canehurst NPC who is just called NPC for Castle Archives. So the Castle Archives, I'm pretty sure, is the library. Because I don't know where else. Unless, like, the problem is that about a third of Canehurst was deleted, so it's possible there was, like, an archive somewhere. But, NPC for Castle Archives. So, if you think about the way that Canehurst's library is structured, the top floor has no enemies on it, and there's no way for enemies to get in or out. So it would have been a safe place to put an NPC, because there would have been nothing to hurt them, and there's no way that, like, you could, like, get in. It's a safe place to put an NPC, basically. It's like an enemy-free zone. You'll remember that when there was the big Bloodborne data, like, dump at the end of 2017, one of the first things that got dug up, it was by Sanidus K, was a healing church priest that we thought was Norbert or Herbert. He's like the really short, like, squat guy with the beard. And he's holding the 2 important things here is he's holding a book, and he's got a cloak on over his clothes, like he's like a fur like cloak over it with a hood. If you put those 2 things together, it's like, okay, he's got a book, which makes sense if he's in a library somewhere. But more importantly, he's got the cloak on. So if he's like... He must be outside the healing church if he's wearing a cloak, because he's wearing it to travel. There's no other reason for him to be wearing it. And the only place in Yharnam that is, like, cold and snowy is Canehurst.
Right.
Right. And also, the look of that character, like, a lot of Bloodborne aesthetically is copied from the 92 Dracula, the Coppola one. I'm pretty sure the look of him is meant to be reminiscent of Anthony Hopkins from that movie where he plays Van Helsing. And in that movie, when Van Helsing goes to Castle Dracula, he wears a very similar cloak. So I think, like, all signs point to Castle Archives NPC being that guy. Because he's, like, a guy from the Healing Church. Because he's just called NPC for Castle Archives. Everything else to do with Canehurst, if they're from Canehurst, they have that in the name. They're called, like, Bloodline Queen or something. He's just called NPC. So I think the idea is, like, he is a guy from the Healing Church who would have gone to Canehurst. And that's why he's wearing the big cloak, and that's why he's got the book, because he's, like, researching stuff in the Canehurst library. Because otherwise the whole top of that library kind of has no reason to exist. Like, it's just a big empty space with some blood gems. Yeah. Cool.
I want to ask you something.
Yes.
Okay, you know this picture of Queen Annalise, the one... there's a picture in the arts book, the official arts book.
Yeah.
Then there are some pictures on the walls of Kinehurst. And one of the pictures is a lady with her hair up with a medallion who looks like ethereal.
Yeah.
Is this Queen Annalise? Would you say?
I think it's possible. Like, Annalise does have a face.
Yeah.
The problem is that there's like a generic face that it just uses for characters whose faces aren't supposed to be shown. So, you can't clip inside her helmet and see her face because that helmet just replaces your head. But, she does have a face in the data, and it's like a sort of middle-aged bald woman. She has no hair. It's the same face that Eileen uses. Where it's just I think it's just everything is in the middle and there's no hair. Because there's no need for it to have hair because you're not supposed to see it. So, she does have a face, but it's not ever supposed to be shown.
Okay. And let me ask you some...
Sure.
Yeah, go ahead.
You go ahead.
And so there's another picture of, a queen holding a baby. Is it the same person?
I don't know, but I'm pretty sure the kid is Ariana.
Okay, because when you said there was a queen and a princess, I kind of thought maybe the woman holding the baby is a queen, and maybe that's the little princess, and maybe the other lady that may resemble Annalise closely in the artwork book or whatever is the princess.
Yeah, they went through so many different, there's all these different kings as well that we don't ever see.
Oh, yeah, right. Yeah, and we talked about it in the Executioners podcast, I think.
Yeah. I'm pretty sure what they're getting at is just Canehurst is very old. And the older Canehurst people, they look like Queen Yana. And then over time, they gradually, every generation looks a little bit more human. Until you end up with Ariana. Cool. And, I am pretty sure that the baby in that portrait is Ariana.
What makes you so sure?
Because Ariana's from... she's got the Canehurst dress, and it looks like she's from the Canehurst bloodline. And,
Yeah. I know that, Richie, but what makes you so sure that this specific baby is Ariana?
Because it's got blonde hair and it's wearing red.
Okay.
Yeah.
Here we go.
Yeah.
It's got blonde hair and it wears red. Okay. Yeah. Detective Batman, greatest detective.
Thank you.
Every woman that you meet that has blonde hair and wears red as a baby in a picture is Ariana as an adult?
Well, the thing is that this is a work of fiction, and we don't see any other babies with blonde hair wearing red.
At some point in my life, I had blonde hair. I also have red outfits in my closet.
Yeah.
Am I Ariana?
Well, yeah, but you're real.
And you're real good in testing me, Richie.
Can we insert a trombone noise there?
And for once I was feeling like the podcast was going people are going to enjoy this because it's just you talking and I'm listening. It's very educational. But no, you had to go out and test me.
Okay.
As per usual.
Okay, well, now that we're halfway through, the rest...
Hopefully, all the people that come here for the first time tuned out at about 10 minutes.
Yeah.
And I will not be judged by new people thanks to you, Richie.
It's all right.
Because you don't even read the comments.
No, I don't.
I'm the one that has to deal with, he does not contribute anything to the conversation. Oh, Sin bullies Richie.
People like it when you bully me. They gave you money yesterday.
Oh, that's true. That's a good point. Cinder donated $5 for me to insult you from my insult generator.
Because you have to make a distinction where it's people leave comments saying don't bully Richard, but they're not paying you. The people who pay you are telling you to bully me.
Next time somebody's like, oh, you're so mean, you add nothing, you bully Richie, you need to stop. You know what? I'll be like, yeah, if you want me to stop bullying Richie and contribute something to the conversation, why don't you pay me? That's what I'll say.
You want to add like a bison silence tier?
Yes. How much is my silence worth?
Well, the problem is if that happened, then the people who like you bullying me would start removing their pledges. So to go back down again.
Well, that's why we gotta... Let's see. We gotta make it worth it. Okay. This is live. This is history making itself live. Okay, I'm going on Patreon. I'm going on goals. Add a goal.
I have to go in 23 minutes.
$20,000. Sin will not bully Richie and will contribute to the conversation. Excellent. Problem solved.
All right.
Okay, Richie. So you have to go in 20 minutes. So what else would you like?
23 minutes. Well, 22 now.
Well, you should have just thought it and said yes, and we wouldn't have wasted a minute. So, Richie, what else would you like to tell us about cut content?
Okay, this is just going to be like the lightning round, where we just go down everything else that was removed area by area. Okay. Yosefka's Clinic, you know how there's a Scourge Beast in there that you fight at the very start of the game? And it's... The way that they make it an easy fight is they reduce its health to, like, a tiny amount. There's an unused, like, unique Scourge Beast for the clinic that just has, like, really shitty stats. So it looks like that would have been what you fought initially. Instead of, like, a regular Scourge Beast with low hit points, it would have just been a very weak Scourge Beast, and there would have only been one.
Okay, next.
Okay. If you've been paying attention to what Lance has been doing, he found there was a Garden of Eyes, the like fly people from Bergenworth, that wandered around the clinic after a certain point in the game. And that is in there, and that has a different like item ID for the thing that it drops. Which is like, it's not the same ID as the ones in Bergenworth. So it would have dropped something like specific, but we haven't quite figured out what the drop ID would have been. But yeah, like that would have like been a unique thing that dropped something that you didn't get from the regular Gardens of Ice. It's also possible that like there was only ever meant to be one of these things. And it's like just a unique thing for the clinic, and then they made it a Bergenworth enemy. Further you go into Central Yharnam, there are Thumerians for Central Yharnam, and like pretty much all the Yharnam areas have Thumerians like listed as enemies in them. So I think like there's an NPC who's removed, but he talks about how like when the chalices were taken, the Thumerians came out of the labyrinth to get the chalices back. So I think like it looks like at some point maybe the like Thumerians would have appeared in Yharnam, like maybe after the Mensis ritual, like as if they're trying to get the chalices back. And like there's an enemy in the Chalice dungeons that people have probably seen, and it's like a very, very tall, thin Thumerian who doesn't attack you, but is like glowing and has a staff, and they just sort of like wander around, and they're non-hostile. There's a bunch of those listed in Central Yharnam, and they're called the Ghost of Moonlight. That's all we know about them. There's almost nothing cut from Cathedral Ward. That seems to be basically the same. With the exception of there are the Lauren cleric enemies from the Chalice dungeons. They're like little hunched beast characters that shoot fireballs at you. They're also, like, in most of the Healing Church areas, there are those. And I think the initial idea behind them was that they were, like, Healing Church clerics who transformed. Rather than, like... Because it looks like Lauren was, like, a last-minute thing. Like, they hadn't planned on this whole Lauren story. So it looks like early on they were just, like, beast clerics. Like, lower members of the Healing Church than the Vicars who transformed. Like, basically tiny little cleric beasts. So when you get to Old Yharnam, there's a version of Parl there, and he's just called Storm Beast. And this is going to be important later on. So just keep in mind that Parl's there and he's called Storm Beast. The Jira summon we already talked about. In Hemwick, I guess a lot of people probably know this, but it's still sort of like, it's semi-obscure and people don't see it. If you go to Hemwick after the moon has risen, by which I mean like after Amelia, and you have above, I think it's 10 inside, it might be 15. These like when you're fighting the Witch of Hemwick and she summons those very tall like ghost women with the sickles, they will spawn throughout Hemwick. Like they'll just appear out of the ground, even if the witch isn't there. So those are in Hemwick, but they're also everywhere else. Like every area of the game has data for like those ghost things rising out of the ground. So it looks like they would have been like that effect applied everywhere. So if you have as above a certain threshold of insight, you just risk those things appearing. The other thing about Hemwick is that the witch's name is, she's just called Eye Collector, which is the enemy. She's called Eye Collector brackets as a boss. So, like, we know that the early version of Bloodborne started in Hemwick. So she probably wasn't, like, the boss of Hemwick at that point. So it looks like when they shuffled the areas around and they made Hemwick like a separate place that you could go or not go, they came up with the Witch of Hemwick boss by just getting that enemy and then like giving her more health and making her a boss. Which I guess explains why like people say, oh, the Witch of Hemwick boss feels sort of like not that great. It's just like long and boring and relies on an invisibility gimmick. This is probably why. Like, they probably just made her out of existing assets that weren't meant to be a boss. And again, like, we've seen in the trailers, Vicar Amelia is in that room. So it's possible that, like, Vicar Amelia was always supposed to be in that room at some point, and then they moved her. After they moved her to the cathedral, replacing the cleric beast, like, there was nothing in her room. So they made that room the Witch of Hemwick's room. Onto Forbidden Woods. Lauren clerics in Forbidden Woods as well. They really like Lauren clerics. They are just everywhere. The corpses that like crawl around in the rivers. Those are in they're in Central Yharnam. They're also in Forbidden Woods, and weirdly, like the variants of them, they all have like a special name. So there's like Drowned Corpse Beast, Drowned Corpse City, Drowned Corpse Young, Drowned Corpse Church, etc. And I don't quite know what the deal is. Like, I don't know if they were meant to be like different looking variants, or I don't know. But yeah, there's a bunch of unused variants that they don't appear to be like significantly different. They just have different names. The Thumerians with the pickaxes in the dungeons that are always digging, there's a ton of them in Forbidden Woods. And so I guess the idea is like they were excavating the chalices. So you'd see like Thumerians just like walking out of the dungeons or like expanding the dungeons. One thing that helps clear a lot up is that, in Forbidden Woods there's like a bunch of celestials, just like in a like little dead end somewhere.
Yeah.
They are there, but they're tagged like celestial enemy, and then in brackets for connecting pathway to City B. City B is what Central Yharnam is called. So it looks like and also like connecting pathway to City B is the name for the cavern under Yosefka's clinic. Okay. So those celestials were designed to be under Yosefka's clinic, and that's why they're there. They're like the Yosefka's celestials that she's dumped. But they ended up...
would make more sense.
Yeah, that makes a lot more sense. Yeah. And they just moved them somewhere else, so it doesn't really make a great deal of sense anymore. But there they are. Also, the Medaris twins are called Executioner, which explains, I guess, why they dress like Meralda from Demon Souls. Right. The oddest thing I found, actually, is that the fireflies above the swamp, I just assumed were like a particle effect, but they're actually NPCs. Like tiny little glowing NPCs that just follow this like AI thing where they move around the swamp. Okay. Bergenworth. Bergenworth, we've established like Bergenworth used to be gigantic and they gradually cut parts of it off.
Yeah.
There are tons and tons and tons. Yep.
What's Bergenworth? I know not such location.
Dignity City.
Right.
There are tons and tons and tons of Thumerians there. Like pretty like all the like the chalice ones, like the warriors with the giant two-handed swords. There's a bunch of them there. There's also like Yarnum huntsmen and like their dogs and the crows and everything are like all over Bergenworth, like the old Bergenworth. The celestial emissaries are there as well. So again, this is from like the very early Bergenworth that was massive. And but when I say Yarnum huntsmen, I mean like presumably it's just the ones from Forbidden Woods that aren't supposed to be from Yarnum but reuse the same models. So where it gets interesting is that the slime scholars and everything are there, but they're called like for Nightmare Classroom. So like we've known for a while that the lecture hall is just part of Bergenworth. Like it's actually on the same map, it's just invisible. And we have early maps of Bergenworth that show that the lecture hall is there. But it looks like, and we just assumed, okay, some point very late on, they just had to say it was part of the nightmare. So I don't know if they added that like Nightmare Classroom identifier much later on, or if they possibly always did intend for the lecture hall to be in the nightmare and it was like a workshop dream situation. Where like they would be the real place and also the nightmare version. And they'd be separate. So, Canehurst, we have covered like the Canehurst NPCs. There are attack dogs in Canehurst. The ones from Hemwick that have the spikes on them. There's also the eye collectors in Canehurst. Like the Witch of Hemwick things. Another thing about Canehurst, this is like not an NPC or enemy thing, but the doll repair kit item that Santa dug up, that we now know was found on a corpse in Canehurst. So like early on, the assumption was that the doll would be broken when you started the game. And then when you got the repair kit, you'd repair her and then she would talk to you and level you up and stuff. But the repair kit we now know was in Canehurst. And Canehurst is a place that you find very late in the game. So it must have been used on for something else. It can't have been for the beginning of the game. And it was probably used, I think, on the doll in the workshop because she's always broken. So it looks like the purpose of the doll repair kit was to do something to the doll in the workshop. Probably like going back to the whole original idea where like the doll was based on the Vile Blood Queen and like that was her kid that was killed to get the cord and everything. Right. Upper Cathedral Ward is also full of lore and clerics. There's a variant of the brain sucker there that's called throwing. And it's not the paralysis attack they do, it's like some kind of ranged thing, but it's not clear what it actually is. That's pretty much it for Upper Cathedral Ward. It's not that much was changed. So, Yahar-Gul. The corpse puppets that Mikolash uses in his boss fight are in Yahar-Gul. I guess, like, they just resurrected corpses. There's also, there's a church giant with a cannon in Yahar-Gul who I guess would have, like, been up somewhere and shot at you as you were trying to run up the street. The eye collectors are there, but they're called Jailer Hag. And the when the bell ringing women summon the Yharnamite like blood ghost people. There are versions of them, but they have poison attacks instead of their regular attack. So they would have poisoned you as they hit you. So when I said, like, remember that Parl is called Stormbeast. Parl is still here, but he's called Stormbeast / Skeleton. So it looks like, because the Yahar'gul ritual was resurrecting all these dead things, it looks like maybe the idea was that Parl would be... You would kill Parl in Old Yharnam, and then the Yahar'gul ritual would bring him back to life, and you'd fight the skeleton.
Oh, and that's cool.
That might be why, like, he's just undead and there's no real explanation. It's just, like, the undead dark beast, but it looks like he would actually have been, like, the story was he was dead, and then the Mensis ritual brought him back to life.
Is there any relation to the Shrine of the Storm?
What, from Demon Souls?
Yeah, or to the Storm Ruler from Dark Souls?
And Demon Souls.
Yes.
There's references to, like, Stormbeast a lot in the cut stuff.
Okay, Rich, wait. Of course there's a connection of Bloodborne.
Yeah, Bloodborne was Demon Souls 2 at one point.
Yeah.
Yeah. I can go into Storm a little bit, because, like, I guess we'll, like, take a detour to discuss chalices. Initially, like, the idea, and we've touched on this before, is that the chalice dungeons, when they started out, it wasn't like you warp somewhere. They were just underneath Yharnam. Which raised the question that, like, we brought up when we talked about Lauren, which is like, well, alright, you're going underground, but you end up in Lauren, which is apparently a completely different place. And you can end up in East, which is also apparently a completely different place. From what I have, like, gathered from, like, removed stuff, Lauren and East were originally, like, they were, like, effects you would apply to a dungeon, and they're called Storm and Cosmic. Like, there's the dungeons, there's, like, Fetid, Rotted, Cursed, and then there also would have been Spider, Storm, and Cosmic. So you would have, like, used a chalice, added Storm or Cosmic effect to the chalice, and then you would have still gone underneath Yharnam, but it would have looked like Lauren or East, with, like, either the lightning or the Cosmic effect. So the Storm stuff, like, the Storm beasts and everything are connected to that Storm, like, chalice effect, rather than connected to a place called Lauren. Okay, going to Nightmare Frontier, here's where things get odder. So the Nightmare Frontier has a name that people are saying it's called Hometown. It's more like it's called, like, the place of origin, or, like, the historic place, which, like, kind of means hometown. Because, like, this is my hometown, you mean, like, that's the place I come from. That's, like, where my origins are. But the name is, like, the place of origin. The Ghosts of Moonlight are here, and they have two variants called Moonlight and No Moonlight. And I don't know what the deal is. But, like, it looks like there would have been, like, Thumerians in that place. And the, the Burned Warriors? Synergist made some videos on them. They're there as well. And there's references to, like, burned corpses and burned things. So it's almost like the Nightmare Frontier would have been, like, somewhere where, almost like the fishing hamlet, where, like, it had been defiled and all these people had been burned, and then, like, the burned corpses would rise again.
Uh-huh.
Something like that.
Interesting.
Yeah. So then we get to Mensis. So if you've been following Lance's stuff, he'll say that the name for Mensis is Trap Road. And that is the name for it. It's written phonetically. It's just like Torapur Road. And we had no idea what that meant. We, for a while, thought it was meant to be called Trapped Lord. And it was referring to Murgo or Mikolash, because, like, Lord and Road are kind of, like, similarly written if you write them phonetically. But No, trap road is like a Japanese idiom that means like obstacle course. So like it turns out like there's levels in Mario that the Japanese version is called Trap Road. And I even found like a website that called Sen's Fortress Trap Road. So it just means like this is an obstacle course. So that's all it means. It's just like this is an area where there's like a lot of shit to dodge. When you get there, the Murgo attendants are called jailers. Like the Thumeri, the big silver Thumerians. It's referring to them as jailers, and like that I think means like not like there's those cages hanging everywhere, that they would actually have been like prison cells. Similar to Latria, where it's like people are being held in these cages. Instead of them just being like, here's a birdcage full of books for no reason. So I'm wondering if like the idea was that the Mensis people had come here and then they'd all been captured and held in those cages, except for Mikolash. Should also probably point out that like Mikolash himself, the very, very early versions of him, he would have been encountered like early on as like a sane version of himself. You would have been able to talk to him and he would have been like, he's almost timid. And then what would happen is like toward the end of the game, he would go insane. And then he would like project himself to Mensis and you would chase him there. So that's why when he sees you, he's like, ooh, a hunter, because he's kind of recognizing you. Because, oh, you're the hunter I kept seeing and you followed me to the dream. Well, you can't stop me. That's like what he's doing. And like there's references to like in Hemwick there is a wandering madman. And we're pretty sure that that's Mikolash. So like Mikolash would have been completely like quote unquote friendly NPC, and then at some point he would relocate to Hemwick and go mad. And then you would have warped to the Nightmare to either the Frontier or to Mensis directly and like encountered him there. And like I'm not sure how that squares with Yahagul because I don't know what the deal with Yahagul was, if his corpse was always going to be there, or if like maybe like you finished Yahagul and then like that's what triggered Mikolash to disappear and relocate to Hemwick. I don't know. There's an unused Shadow of Yharnam who has a gun, who we never encounter for Mensis. And the we've talked a bit about the wet nurse being a mess, but like the wet nurse was originally like a boss for the mid game. And she seems kind of important because she's called like Demon of Death and Darkness. And then the Shadows of Yharnam and the spider people with the humans, the spiders with the human heads, are listed as like, these are like her servants. But we're not exactly sure how that all played out.
Mm-hmm.
Mm. Yeah. And finally, Snuffles the pig, who we all know and love.
Yes.
He was for Forbidden Woods.
Oh, snap.
Yep.
So is that all for now?
That's pretty much all that we have for now, yeah. I'm sure that, like, Lance will probably do a video on, like, Mikolash at some point, because he's able to restore that.
Awesome. I'm sure Bean will be very happy about it.
Yeah. I actually already messaged her.
Oh, you did?
Yeah.
For those who don't know, Bean is an amazing artist, and we'll link her stuff in the description.
Yeah. She's a Mikolash cosplayer.
Yeah, she's the number one Mikolash fan.
Number one Mikolash fangirl.
Yeah. Oh, and I have really good news. as we were recording this podcast, my boyfriend finally beat the final boss of Sekiro.
Wow.
Yeah. So congrats to him.
Actually, hang on. Because there's a cosplayer who I am mutuals with on Twitter. And she's only got like 70-something followers, so I'll give her a boost. She uploaded a video called "How to Be Completely Incompetent and Still Beat the Final Boss of Sekiro."
Lol.
So I'll just paste that in here, and I guess you can link that in the description. Yeah.
/comments. Yeah.
Yeah.
Cool. Super. Does she have a Twitter?
Yeah. It's I have to be careful with the spelling because she's removed vowels. It's it's Unlimited Babe Works as one word, but she's removed the vowels except the U in Unlimited, so it's like UNLMTD and then Babe Works as like all one word.
And found her. Okay, so yeah. I'll link her Twitter on my Twitter and stuff too.
This is how to beat Ishin Ashina if you are incompetent.
That's excellent.
It is.
That is what I'll have to do once, if I ever reach Ishin.
If you ever get on my level. I haven't beaten Ishin Ashina. I've been playing Kingdom Hearts.
I'm still at shirtless lightning boyfriend.
A lot of people just want to stay there, to be honest. They don't ever want to get past Genichiro.
You know what? That's going to be my excuse.
A lot of people I know like beat the game and then said like, I just want to go back and fight Genichiro again.
Okay, well, thank you so much, Richie.
Thank you to Lance and to Santa for digging up all that stuff and sending me gigantic Excel files of incomprehensible data that I spent a while sifting through.
Yeah. You know, I noticed, Richie, you thank a lot of people, but do you ever thank me?
I think that's implied.
Do you know how much editing I have to do on these podcasts? What, you think you just come out sounding coherent?
See, I think like, you must do a lot of editing, and then I like look at them and they're like slightly shorter than what we recorded, and you leave in digressions about Tim Allen.
Oh my god, that's different. Everything is calculated and all my edits have a purpose.
Okay.
So I think you should thank me a little more often.
Thank you, Sin.
Oh, don't mention it. I enjoy what I do. No need to thank me.
It's not what it sounded like before we were recording. You were in a very bad mood about all the things you had to do. We refer to the pre-record discussions as the desalination process, in which Sin gets all the salt out of her system.
Yep.
Before we press record.